Thanks, Andrew, and also the RCG community for allowing me to come and participate. Some of you would have probably heard and were listening to my background. I've got a long background in telecommunications and recently have gone out on my own and starting to work in the energy space. And we're supporting RCG in off-grid and also doing things in the grid space as well. So who is Soul Energy? It's a New Zealand-owned entity. I'm one of 4 shareholders. 2 other of my shareholders are co-founders of a company called Face Me, so they've got a long record and good startups. And if you want to kind of understand, they did a capital raise worth $75 million a few weeks ago. So they've also been involved in telecommunications. We decided to get involved in energy storage because we thought there's a real opportunity to combine it with telecommunications and also leverage this next wave of green energy. And I'll talk to you about how we've thought about it and then what we're actually doing for RCG. So as a company, we see ourselves as an end-to-end integrator of generation and energy storage. And I pause on generation as a starting point because we want everyone to be sure that we're not concerned about what the input for energy is, whether that be the grid, whether that be solar, whether that be wind, or whether that be water, or whether that be diesel. We have a preference to be environmentally friendly where we can, but that's not appropriate in all situations. We start off with design. And why is design important? Because what we've seen in the market historically is very easy just to slap in a dirty solution. And I deem a dirty solution diesel and lead acid batteries. Why do I think that's a dirty solution? How many of you know what happens to that lead acid battery when it leaves New Zealand? How far does it have to travel? How much mining goes on behind it? And it generally only has a 3-year life. We also looked at partnering, and we've got another business we've partnered with called Pacific Footings, which has removed the need to have concrete pads. We simply jackhammer into the ground, prongs into the ground, so therefore making very small damage to the environment. The next piece there, manufacturing. We manufacture here in New Zealand. We use a company up in Warkworth called MS Engineering. Some of you may remember thinking back to the America's Cup. They were the partners who managed to help Oracle win the America's Cup. They quickly turned around a solution within 7 working days. Integrating the solution. One of the things we looked around in the marketplace is there's a lot of players who do things very, very well, but no one integrating it in one space and simplifying it for the end user. In this case, we're talking about RCG, where we can deliver them a solution that works from day one, is tested when it arrives on site. Then you're looking at the deploying. We wanted to look at things, and when we look at the actual solution, how it looks, how can we simplify the process? How can we make sure that we're not going to these remote locations multiple times and we can stand it up once and know that it works? So our whole thought there is that actually let's test it in the factory, let's deliver it and monitor it once it gets there, and then we shouldn't have to visit. We generally think we can stand it up in 3 to 5 hours on site. We generally say it takes us 12 weeks to build once we've got a final design. We've been working with RCG and we've been bringing that down to 6 or 8 weeks to support them as well. And the next part about monitoring, why is monitoring important? You don't want to go into this beautiful environment all the time. You want to be able to monitor it and also make sure you have the ability to select the best input. And what I mean by that is solar the best input? Do you have enough solar to charge the battery? Do you need to go to diesel? Can you switch over? For example, if you have a spot price that increases, can you flick off the main network and go and use your solar in the storage there? Support, obviously very, very important, and then recycle. So the battery technology that we use, which I'll show, that we recommend to our customers and which RCG are using, is a flow battery. It's a zinc bromide. It has a minimum of a 10-year life, and we only say 10 years because we replace a small fan in the chemical, but the chemical can then actually be cleaned and carry on. It loves going to 100 and 0. It loves all conditions, so we think it's the most appropriate. But again, it's horses for courses, and there are still people out there that want lead, and you've got to be able to take people on a journey, but our recommendation is red flow. So what does the solution look like that's getting deployed for RCG? So here's a stainless steel cabinet. So you can see the brains are all located in the front of the cabinet. And the idea of how we put it together, it's all modularised. So effectively, as your demands increase, you can just increase the modules that you attach to the cabinet. It's very, very secure. As mentioned earlier, it sits on a framing system, which can also support the tower and the mast. It can provide fencing, and all remote monitored. We think this has great applications around the IoT space and what you can do with it, particularly around roading as we evolve and leveraging energy in these places where energy isn't currently provided. You can see there from some of the stats that are there. You can disable it remotely. It's all controlled. And again, coming back to this, simplifying the structure, putting it all in one place, and enabling either ourselves, RCG, or the operators to actually monitor it and see what's happening. And one of the things that we saw in the market is that there are a lot of people who had a lot of devices out there, but the ability to monitor those remotely weren't that great. And when you've got them in far-reaching places, you do want to be able to quickly swap them around and know what's happening and be proactive. In the back end of the cabinet, you can see an example of a flow battery there. They weigh 250 kilograms. It's not such a big issue here in New Zealand, but in the islands where we deploy, it definitely stops them getting stolen. You'd be surprised how much lead acid and lithium batteries get stolen. And you can see the sleighs that we've put in there. So it's very, very modular how you can put them in and move them out. And as I mentioned earlier, you are just actually stacking them up next to each other. It's all secure, it's all vented, so it's simply lock and leave. For moving, you just lift it up, put it on a truck, take it to site, and you dump it on either, our preference is on one of our Pacific footings or on concrete, and you're done. And you turn it on and away you go. So again, trying to minimise the amount of touch that needs to occur actually on site for these. So we're pretty proud with what we're doing in the space and how it's all come together. We think that energy is critically important to telecommunications, and for some of you who may have heard me speak before around how does this get rolled out when you look at agriculture. And I thought, well, I'll give you a high-level overview of some of the areas we played. It's probably pretty clear what we're doing in telecommunications around cell towers, but a couple of case samples for agriculture for you to think about as you look at dairy and the impact if the power goes down on your vat of milk. The ability to leverage the footprint that you've got in dairy, have another power source and make sure that you actually can have continuous refrigeration of your milk is very, very important. If you take that to a next step, and I'd like anyone that's interested to start working on it, that must then flow on to your insurance costs, because from a business continuity perspective, you can guarantee supply of electricity to that point. The other one, which I think is interesting, is pivot irrigators. Most of these are operating during peak periods on the grid. So why not leverage solar on the pivot irrigator? Use energy that you can store here, and then also pick and choose when you're using energy at different price points. Again, what we're saying here is actually leverage all the inputs, but start to store the energy where it doesn't normally get stored. And we're very, very excited to be doing that. And it came out earlier about the importance of communities, and you'll see in the last vertical. I fundamentally believe that telecommunications and energy combined together with people who don't have that can really enable people. And we mentioned about the ability to attract young people to farms. You know, one of the great things as a young boy or a young girl, if you're in your 20s, would be to go out the back and actually stay in a hut. And for most of them, they still want to be connected. And we can now do that with what's happening with RCG and with the energy solutions that are available to really attract people and get people to love what we have in our country. From a tourism point of view, the ability to send photos is the best way we can promote our country. I think we all know what it's like, that end of a journey or end of a national walk, and that experience and the euphoria that's rolling over you, the conversations that you're having with your friends. If you can immediately send those images, which we will be able to do thanks to the rollout that RCG are doing, is very, very exciting. So the opportunities are there for us now to leverage them, and I think the key thing is working out what the case studies are. How do you enable New Zealanders to be great? And our whole ethos around why we're so delighted to be working with RCG is about the enablement. We're providing the infrastructure, and now let's support communities, look at how they can leverage it, attract people into the environment, and make New Zealand a great place that it is. Thank you.